I'm everyday people. Yeah, yeah.
We're back with Shea Rhodes, and we're talking about commercial sex trafficking and exploitation and getting educated, and my mouth is hanging open a lot because I'm watching a very nice proper person say terms and things that as every industry has their terms. Right. I'm getting a bit of education. One of the things you talked about was the whole thing in prostitution, buying somebody else's time, but there are places where there are legalized prostitution. How do you feel about that?
Are we talking about overseas, or are we talking about in the 9 counties in the state of Nevada where brothels are legal?
Nevada. Nevada.
So, it's a very lucrative industry. And I know that there are 2 of those 9 counties right now that are working to, by public vote, eliminate the brothels in their jurisdiction. I think that you can dress up the industry and call it what you want to call it, but I still think it's exploitive. And there are, lots of stories circulating right now because of what the advocates in Nevada are working towards to, eradicate the commercial sex trade and the legal brothels. I believe it's exploitive. I think that a lot of these are younger adult women that are recruited. Some will say that they enjoyed their time in the brothels and they made a lot of money. But again, what does it say about society when you can purchase someone else for your own sexual pleasure?
The whole concept of renting a person is distasteful overall, and I understand what you're saying, and I brought up Nevada because I just thought that if you got this thing going on and there is some regulation, it's kind of like, if you can regulate it and throw the government in and suck all the fun out of it, maybe you could make it better somehow. But I think that even better, it's still bad in this case. I
just don't think that consent can be purchased.
Right.
And, there are former individuals who consider themselves survivors and exited from the sex trade who at one point were working in New Zealand in the brothels that are legal there. And who's actually protected? It's the brothel owners. It's not the individuals who are engaging in the work. And if they lower the rates and they eliminate the prophylactic measures and you complain, then in effect you were unemployable, and violence still was happening and still is happening because it's still legal there. I advocate for the Nordic model as an abolitionist, meaning in the Nordic model, there are really 3 targeted perpetrators. Obviously, the traffickers, which can consist of, the pimp-controlled prostitution, the pimps, the brothel owners, the illicit massage parlor owners. They're one criminal target. Another one is the sex buyers. And the third is the third-party facilitators that are allowing this to happen, like the hotel industry or the strip club industry. But the prostituted person, that person who's being sold for sex, is not criminalized. And instead, they are given the social services that they need and exit strategies so that they don't have to engage in commercial sex just to survive.
And is this tied... is there any data on people leaving the American industry in Nevada and what they have to say coming out of that?
I don't know if there's any data. Data is really hard to gather, right? Because
nobody wants to talk about it.
This is an underground industry. So I know that there's recently been a report out of Creighton, which is a school in Creighton University in Nebraska, where they have some data scientists who've been able to really comb the trafficking happening alongside of the brothels, and how I haven't read the report and I'm not a data scientist, so crunching numbers isn't easy for me, but they've been able to show that because the brothels do exist and there is a market for sex and traffickers are in a business of making money that they traffic in other people for sex, kids and, young adults for sex. It goes hand in hand because traffickers want to make money.
So at the end of the day, it is a business and they want to make a profit.
Yes.
And it's just a very distasteful business. So if you remove the profit, then the business would dry up. And
so think about how you're going to remove the profit.
Education
to the sex buyers.
Right.
Because the sex buyers are the demand that drives the market for commercial sex. And buying sex is a crime in every single state in Washington, D.C., and it is in Pennsylvania. It's in the exact same section of the crimes code as prostitution. It's actually called prostitution and related offenses. And how do you think it's policed? I am not saying that we need to police our way out of this. We can't police our way out of it. So we have to engage every single sector that's attached to the health industry, law enforcement, education, the government, the business sector. And we have to, try to educate individuals that buying sex is not just a boys will be boys type of mentality that's allowed and giggled about and scoffed at, but just sort of okay. It's not.
Do you think that shaming people is successful at all?
No.
No? Okay.
And there are collateral consequences to that. If you look at like Seattle and King County in the state of Washington, look at their numbers on who is a sex buyer. They've gathered a lot of data, as has Cook County and Chicago. The Cook County Sheriff runs the National John Suppression Initiative, and it's actually run by a survivor of sex trafficking named Marion Hatcher, and she's amazing. But if they've gathered data since the National John Suppression Initiative has been engaged nationally, there are at least 80 jurisdictions involved in Seattle. But who is a sex buyer? It is more often than not a white male who is between the ages of 30 and 50, is employed and is married and has kids. And so if you're shaming these individuals, there are collateral consequences to that. They have kids. Those kids go to school. I think they need education. I think they need to get to the root of why it is they think they can commodify someone else. Do they have a sex addiction? But it's truly about education in the realm of toxic masculinity and what we're going to just tolerate as a society.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've in my dealings with cases that's had a little crossover with this, the people that we've found that were engaging in, I'll just lump it under lewd behaviors, were not the people that you would think or you'd been conditioned to think. They were the most normal people in the world other than this thing, And
let's call it what it is. It's sexual violence. It's not just lewd behavior, right? It's sexual violence. And so I think that if we start having these conversations that initially might be really uncomfortable to have, I think it's really critical because it's an opportunity to listen, to pay attention, to take yourself out of something that we might just consider normal and move forward with not allowing it to continue to happen.
How do you make the conversation more comfortable? Because I don't get uncomfortable that often. I can talk like a stevedore when I have to, but you make me feel like I'm wearing buckle shoes and a pilgrim hat.
And I think that's good because I think that means you're learning something and you might be reflecting on conversations you've had with your peers, things that you've seen, things that you've watched, and you can ask yourself, is this something that I want our future generations to grow up with? And I think that change isn't easy and sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I think it's good.
Oh, if I ran the world, it would be a mess, but it would be an organized mess, and it would just be like, half the people walking the street would not be wearing what they're wearing walking the street. There would be some kind of regulation, and special. It's like I don't my godchildren are good about the boy. Who cares? But they're good about it overall. But every now and then you'll see something. I'm like, where you going with that? Right. And I don't think there's I don't think there's a lot of people doing that. At the door saying, where are you going? Because those look like pajamas. Bed's that way, and because one of the many signs of getting older is looking and seeing who let that person out of the house with that on.
I don't think it's just about what you wear. I mean, fashion is an expression and fashion changes. I mean, I'm hearing, and I was actually reading Vogue magazine when I was working out earlier today, and I think the 80s are back, which is a little terrifying with the big shoulder pads. But fashion is an expression. Fashion, what you wear, does not give someone else permission to hurt you. And, it's something I've talked about with my colleagues, dress codes in school and girls' tank tops having to be, a certain number of inches wide, or they get sent home. They call it dress coded. Why is the width of a girl's tank top something that we can't, I guess because it's going to make the boys not be able to concentrate? Why is what she's wearing, that's another issue that we need to talk about. Like the sexualization of young girls and the over-sexualization of young girls is a problem. And it's just clothes. It doesn't give someone permission to engage in sexual violence with you.
I absolutely agree with you about that, but I do have a problem with, I think that we do have to take some responsibility to not, this and anything else, set ourselves up to be victimized. It's like you should be able to leave your car unlocked in Center City, but you can't.
No, you cannot.
And common sense says lock the car, right. or donate your stuff to the community.
Let me give you one more analogy.
Okay.
So if we're talking about domestic violence, how is it that we teach our kids that it isn't okay to hurt someone that you love? And I mean physically hurt. So you've got a little boy who's 6 or 7 and a little girl who's 6 or 7, and he pulls her ponytails and she cries. And I'm saying we as society say to her, oh, he just pulled your ponytails because he likes you. And that's not okay. It's telling that little girl that if someone likes you, he can hurt you. And saying to the little boy, if you like someone, it's okay to hurt them. We need to be saying to that little boy, if you like her, say, I like you, or write her a poem, or do nothing, but don't hurt her. Right.
But aren't we, isn't there some, while you shouldn't reinforce that, isn't that act that little boy did completely innocent?
Maybe not.
As an act?
Maybe not.
But how does he know? How does he know that he's
because we have to teach our kids. We have to teach them that these gendered roles that, the boys aren't going to cry. They're not allowed to cry. They express their emotions through sports or whatever. It's okay to be a male and show emotion. Just like girls are told, oh, you're hysterical or you're emotional. You might just be passionate and making a point. It's sort of like the gendered roles that we expect from.
Yeah, there are some that have gone too far, and there's some that have completely flipped, and that's weirded me out in different ways. Like my buddy's wife taking the daughter fishing because he's become that lazy that he won't take his daughter fishing, and it may be sexist, but I thought
that's totally sexist.
That he should take her fishing?
Her mom can take her fishing. That's perfectly acceptable.
I didn't say it wasn't acceptable.
Right.
I think that he should get off his lazy butt.
Well, that's a different story.
And it's a good way to go
with them.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you want to go fishing?
I think see, and that's another thing. You can't expect that everything said is being said out of being sexist. I'm saying he's lazy. He should have got off his butt and taken advantage of that activity and participated with his daughter. I'm not saying it because I'm saying women shouldn't be fishing or women don't have a right to fish, but there are different things that like I think she needs to know how to change a tire, which would not be considered a traditional role. I think she needs to be able to do